My name is Matt Patrick. I'm your host. I am definitely not an expert, but the people I bring on are experts and are much smarter than me. I'm really excited today to have Jim Cofield as my guest. And before we get to him, I wanted to go ahead and say, hey, if you're watching this on Facebook Live, you can comment in the comment section and just give comments if you want, but you can also ask questions. And if it's a good question, we'll answer it. If it's a terrible question, we'll just pretend like it never existed. But we will have a spot for that, hopefully, and answer some good questions for you guys as well. If you are watching post-production on YouTube or particularly YouTube, would you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications? You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram TV, and podcasts are coming shortly. So make sure you subscribe to all of those areas. So like I said, Jim Cofield is my guest today. I'm so excited to have him here with me. I'll read a little bit of your resume there, Jim. Let's see here.
Do a good job, please.
Okay, I got you. It's from your website, so. But Jim's a former church planter and pastor himself. Spent a large portion of his career helping leaders through spiritual life coaching. Jim is married to his wife, Joy. Also works with him at Crosspoint. Crosspoint is the ministry that Jim is a big part of. And this is a special episode for me because Jim is my spiritual coach. He is somebody that's been working with me for several years now and has meant a lot to me. And so I really wanted to get him on here, but he is an expert in many areas, as you can tell by the many, many books behind him. And I just got a picture of a buffalo, but you can tell that he is a smart man, but he is an expert in the area of how the soul relates to its surroundings and then to God. And he wrote a book called The Relational Soul with his friend and coworker, Rich Plass. And so we're going to do some chatting about that today and have a good time there. So Jim, enough from me. Welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Great to be with you, Matt. I've been looking forward to this and I always enjoy hanging out with you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You set me up for really good thoughts about you.
Okay.
I hadn't even met you yet. We were coming to Boulder to work with your staff, and Rich and I had rolled into town, and we were ready for something to eat. So I think I texted you, I believe it was texted you, to say, where can we eat? And you sent us to a very expensive steakhouse maybe not for you, but I will. And it was an unbelievable piece of meat, and enjoyed myself immensely and thought, I think I'm going to like this guy. I really do. He is setting us up right. So thank you for that. That was years ago. Been a delight ever since.
That's awesome. That's funny. I actually remember that. I can name that steakhouse. I sent you to Black Belly, which is one of my favorite places in Boulder. That's owned by a great chef named Hosea Rosenberg, who actually won Top Chef. And so,
Wow.
Yeah. So, hey, just a reminder as we get going, I see a bunch of people logging on right now. If you do have questions, make sure you throw them in the chat section and we'll do our best to get to any questions that you have. So, but Jim, I'm really excited. This is my second episode. I had Darren Patrick on last week. And so
two of you going at it.
Yeah, it was a good time. And so now we've got you on here. And so we met through your ministry of Crosspoint Ministry, which is helping leaders. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you guys do and what Crosspoint is?
Yeah, thank you. Crosspoint, we say our mission is to care for the souls of Christian leaders, mostly vocational leaders, but a lot of lay leaders as well. And we care for the souls of leaders through our book that Rich and I wrote together, The Relational Soul. We care for leaders through providing retreats, some where they come to us, some where we go to them. And then we also care for the soul of leaders by one-on-one coaching and just trying to walk with them. I'm 66 tomorrow.
Oh, man. Happy birthday.
Yeah. I appreciate a nice steak from you. That would be appropriate. But, I'm 66 tomorrow, and I ask God if God would be gracious to give me at this point in life, an opportunity to bless the generation or two behind me, because my wife and I planted a church, did the whole seminary thing, planted a church, worked in a medium-sized church, and then pastored that for a while. And so with about 20, 25 years of pastoral experience and growing up in a ministry family, both of us did, Joy and me, we feel like we've been there. We kind of know what it feels like, and my heart is to help. And so that's what we do.
Man. Well, yeah. That's good. That's good. I can say it's funny because it seems like almost every pastor that I meet nowadays, the question is always, it's how are you doing? And then usually the answer is usually good or bad. And then it goes, hey, have you seen Jim or Rich or been with Crosspoint? And then if the answer is yes, we all have this automatic bond. And then there's this other part where people are like, no, I haven't, but I heard that they're going to put me on sabbatical if I do it.
Well, life's not all bad to get on sabbatical.
No, right? So if you're
coaching,
yeah. So if you're a lead pastor and you need a sabbatical, all you got to do is hire Crosspoint to come in, and then
do the heavy lifting for you.
There you go. I love it. That's so good. That's great. Oh man. Well, it's fun. That's fun stuff. How did Crosspoint come to be? Like, where did it come from?
My colleague Rich Plass had this heartfelt desire after he had been in church planting. He planted a church and was about 15 years into it, and just noticed so many of the generation ahead. He was about 40 at the time. The generation ahead of him were just burned out or cynical or angry or just not doing well. And he thought, is this where I'm going? And didn't want to go there. So he began thinking about it, praying about it, asking a lot of questions. And he wound up doing a PhD in pastoral counseling in Louisville. And that was better than 20 years ago. And it kind of got started because he was in pastoral care ministry and saw that pastors need more care than they were getting, at least at the time. There wasn't a whole lot available outside of a denominational context. So wanted to be available for that. So it was really born out of our own experiences.
Okay. That's great. That's probably sometimes the best way that things are born, right? Is out of personal experience, not out of, just starting stuff like maybe somebody randomly starting a TV show on the internet to randomly out of the blue, right? So, and I also appreciate that you say Louisville, because I'm a Kentucky native as well. So
there's only one proper way to say it.
Right. That's how it goes. All right. So let's dive into the topic at hand a little bit here today. And I've read your book, you and Rich's book, several times. I've recommended it for people. It's actually structured, and we've done sermon series around some of your guys' writings, obviously centered on scripture, and then using some of the principles from your books. But the key takeaway is understanding that we are relational beings, right? And so help walk somebody through. What do you mean by that we are relational beings? What does that mean?
We're created by and for relationships. In other words, we're created by relationships, not just physically, obviously, a man and woman coming together, but ourselves, our souls are created by being in relationship with others. There's no such thing as growing up in the jungle all alone and you can make it work. You have to have others around you. You just do. So I'm created by relationships. Physically, I'm created by relationships emotionally, and I'm certainly created by a relationship spiritually, because it's my relationship with the Lord that gives me new life and brings me out of my alienation. We're also created for relationships. In other words, we're not islands. We're to give ourselves, we're to bless, or as Jesus said, you want to know what all this canon is about so far, guys? It's love God with all your heart and mind, soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's a relational deal. So we would expect the relational God, triune God, to create personal relational beings. And he created us to draw us into the wonderful fellowship that the Trinity enjoys. So that's why we think we're relational beings. In other words, the quality of your life is going to hinge on the quality of your relationships.
Gotcha.
God, with others, and with yourself. You can have a second or third home in the mountains and one at the beach, and it be a $10 million place. And if your relationships aren't good, it's still a lonely place to go.
Yeah.
Relationships make or break your life.
Yeah. We're learning that right now, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's coming through. It's impacting us all. Yeah. One of my big takeaways from your book, but also it's crazy to think about this. We've been working together for almost 5 years now,
Really?
which is wild. But is you said this to me one time. You said, Matt, your relational capacity with God directly impacts your relational capacity with others, right? And for me, that's just been so big because, particularly in the season that we find ourselves in with this global pandemic, is everybody's relational capacities being stretched in different ways. I mean, if you've got kids at home,
yes,
little ones, or if you're alone,
yes,
right? I mean, what do you think about all of this when we're talking about being relational beings with these kind of situations that we find ourselves in?
Well, I think it creates a lot of emotional and probably spiritual strain on our souls. Loneliness is a tough thing. That was kind of one of the first issue we addressed in the first chapter of our book. So I think this, especially with people who are alone, being cooped up in a house alone, that's a very hard thing. The soul begins to feel that I'm not created to do this long term.
Yeah.
An extreme example of that is been found in prisons where they put people in solitary confinement. They do that not to make their life better. They do that for them to feel the weight of being all alone, because we're not created for that.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
It's showing up in depression. It's showing up in anger. It's showing up in a shorter fuse. It's showing up in lots of different ways with people right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And this relational capacity we have, it directly impacts our presence with others, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. And I'd love to have you go ahead and fillet my soul over the internet in front of everybody. I have the sweetest youngest daughter named Dottie. You've met her. She just turned 5. She's so kind, so sweet. And this morning, her and her brother were arguing over where the shadow of something was falling on the wall and what it was from. I mean, the most ridiculous thing. And I was trying to get some work done, and I hadn't really, honestly, like I'd switched into work mode. I hadn't done any of my spiritual disciplines that we worked on, like silent solitude. I had kind of skipped all of that. And I realized it was their argument, the stupidity of the argument weighed on me differently. And I just kind of snapped at my daughter. I didn't even say anything. I just clenched my fists and I looked at her and she just broke down crying right in front of me. It was just like, and I was like, "Oh, what's wrong, girl?" She's like, "You scared me." And I'm like, I didn't even say anything, but my presence in that moment communicated something so much more. And I think we're probably learning a lot of what our presence means to those that we live around right now more than any other time.
When you're forced to be together, it brings out some of the more primal ways of being that we learned early that wasn't touched by God's grace yet. So it's like a man I talked with last week. He said, "Yeah, under stress, I go to enmeshment. I just start reaching out to others and getting all involved and overly involved in their life. And my wife, she goes into detachment, like get away. She doesn't want anything to do with it." And he said, the last 6 weeks have taken 23 years of kind of not so good and crunched it all together. And I think a lot of that is what we're finding. But I think that gives great opportunity. So I can say, what am I noticing? What am I noticing about me? What am I noticing about us in our relationship? And then what I've noticed, then the question is, what do we want to do about that? Is that how we want to live our lives, or do we want to do something differently? Because I think we can change. So we've got to look at this as an opportunity for growth.
So let's riff off that a little bit. Opportunity for growth. Somebody's watching right now and they're going, I'm just tired. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just tired. And you want me to grow? Like, what does that even look like? All I want to do is have a nap and have some silence, some peace, or I just want to have a physical interaction with a person again.
Well, I think you start with, is there any way you can get a nap? Or start with what your body is telling you. If you're really tired, it's pretty hard to try to have this interesting or needed conversation without feeling things that I don't want to feel. So, and I know that this is very hard. I'm coaching pastors and they're at home and they got 3 or 4 little kids, and usually the wife and the kids, and they all have ways of getting out and about, and it's not now. So what I've been telling people is try to find a way to tag team or something to give the other some sort of relief. And I've had people tell me, yeah, I went and slept in my car in the garage. That was 2 hours that my spouse gave me. Start with physically taking care of yourself. And then secondly, I would say be realistic about what we can ask the kids to bear up and how well they're going to do right now. Be a little bit easier on them if at all possible. And then I would say there's always time to at least talk about what we're going to talk about when this thing is over. At least do that. If you can't get to it now, make a commitment to what you will get to when this is done.
Yeah, man, that's good. One of the reasons I love Crosspoint is you guys advise sabbaticals and naps. So true story
along the way.
True story is after our initial meetings, and you told me I needed to rest more. And I said, what does that mean? And you said, Matt, you need to take a nap. And I was shocked with how guilty I felt around taking a nap. Like, it was a weird journey for me. And so it actually led me to buying a couch that fits in my office. It's big enough that I can lay vertically on and actually take a nap. Now I'm great at it. I can nap anywhere. So money well spent on hiring Crosspoint taught me how to nap. So,
well, if we're going to deal with soul care, we have to start the foundation, the bottom rung, so to speak, is biology. Where are we physically?
Yeah.
Because if that's off, if that foundational piece is really off, and we're off physically, either we're not getting the right food, we're not exercising well enough, we're not getting the right rest, or there's something chemically off in our brain. We can talk about prayer all we want, and it's just going to be very, very hard. So take care of your body as best you can.
Yeah. So you would say pay attention to the physical realities that you're feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some of the we have to use the material part of us to help the immaterial part of us. Our minds can't get us always where we want to be. That's why, like a discipline like fasting was counting on the body helping me learn some things in my mind, the material helping the immaterial. So our bodies have to help us.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it is fascinating to see how when I am beat down in my soul, right? Like, I feel like my soul is just tired. I find that I'm physically exhausted as well. There's definitely a correlation there. Any thoughts you have about that? Anything else you want to expound about on the body and the soul, kind of in that connection?
We're embodied souls. We can expect the condition of our soul to be felt in our body, and the condition of our body to be felt in our soul. We know that. We know when we're tired, that's not the time for a deep, hard conversation with my spouse.
Yeah.
Probably not the time to do it. It's just my body is going to affect even the way I say things and the way I hear things.
Hmm.
So we're big at Crosspoint on the material part of us, the body part of us, and we're big on that because Jesus dignified, not only created all of this, but God's way of most clearly revealing God's self, according to Hebrews 1, is Jesus. That's an embodiment. That's an incarnation. So it took the incarnation and embodiment to say something very clear about God to us. So we want to pay attention to the God's order of things, created order of things.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I think that's it's kind of like we need that dashboard right in front of us saying, hey, something's off.
Yeah.
And the body's part of it, the soul's, like all those things, like where are the gauges? That's something that you worked with me.
Yeah.
Like gauging where you are,
What's the body telling me? What's my spirit telling me? Yeah, my soul telling me. So what's my mind telling me about things? So if we're going to do soul care, we need all the help we can get. We need the help of others. We need the help of our own bodies. We need the help of Scripture. So we need all the help we can get.
For sure. Well, I want to dive into take a little bit of not a detour, it's still in the same vein, but I want to talk about something that's always intrigued me, probably more than anything else in our conversations and my time working with you and Crosspoint, has been the reality of how permeable our souls are.
Mm.
Would you share a little bit what that means for people?
Permeability is simply means I absorb. And when we talk about the soul, is God has designed me so that I can absorb your presence. And ultimately, so that I can absorb and have within me the very presence of God, the indwelling spirit. And we absorb the presence of others. God designed us that way in order to help us at so many levels. For example, with a little baby, a baby doesn't know how to self-soothe. If something's going wrong, the baby's crying, and what the parent does is provide a soothing presence. No parent, at least a parent that understands, is going to hold a baby and say, look, get over your problem. They don't do it that way. What they do is they rock, they hold gently, they soothe, they give soothing sounds. And the reason that's done is because that's how a baby learns to soothe themselves, because they absorb the soothing presence of another. And that teaches me, oh, this is how I settle down. It's your presence affecting me. And so and that continues all the way through our lives. If I'm in a rotten mood, Joy's gonna feel that. My wife's gonna feel that, because I'm not gonna disguise it very well. She's going to absorb my presence. And that's why we say the greatest gift you can give someone is your transformed and transforming presence, because they're going to absorb it. They can't help but absorb it, because God made us permeable beings. Yeah. See this, just if you walk down the sidewalk, you can walk by a stranger, and if you smile, about 80% of the time, you'll get a smile back, and they can't even help themselves, hardly. They just see you smile and they smile, because we have
wearing a mask.
What's that? Well, yes, pre or post. We have mirror neurons that imitate and mimic what we see done. It's just, when watching babies learn, it's fascinating of how do they learn? How do they learn language even? Because of mirror neurons that mimic, that do. I'm absorbing something, my mirror neurons process that and make an effect on me. So we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has made us so that we are formed by relationships. So that's if we're going to be formed by relationships, we have to have a permeable soul, so I can absorb what you're giving me, what the ethos, the atmosphere that you're bringing to this relationship. Maybe that's
Yeah.
more than you wanted, but
No, you can go all day. No, like that's the point of the show is you don't listen to me, you listen to the people I bring on. So I was thinking as you were saying that, Jim, my mind got going. It turns on every once in a while, and it was going, and I was thinking through, and I was like, okay, if we are these permeable beings, then the reality is that the things that are happening around us are impacting us, whether it be other people or other things. I'm just curious. I didn't put this in our show notes. So I'm throwing you a curveball. You can tell me I don't want to talk about it. That's fine. But I'm just curious. So I was reading something the other day that the amount of time that people during this pandemic are spending on social media has skyrocketed. Right?
I believe that.
What do you think? I mean, I'm not a total hater on social media. Obviously, we're on Facebook Live right now. There's wins there. But talk through what are some of the very real realities of this world we live in, where we have so much technology, but we also are permeable beings, and now we throw a pandemic on top of that.
Yeah.
What's going on there inside of us, and what are some things we should maybe pay attention to or be aware of?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I've thought about it a little bit. I think Kurt Thompson picked off, or I saw an article from him. I also saw something about this from I think some researchers in the United Kingdom. When it comes to being isolated and having to kind of rely on social media, that it's more tiring for one thing, because when I'm with you person to person, my body is picking up a lot of cues from you, communication cues that I don't have to purposely or consciously think about. My body's just absorbing it. My body is getting it and reading that. But when I'm not with you, even though I'm looking at you on a screen, I have to do more thinking to process what would ordinarily be happening automatically. So that's one of the reasons I think people say I'm zoomed out, is because when they spend 2 hours on Zoom, it's a lot harder. If they're really concentrating, really following, it's harder to follow that because it takes much more work, conscious work to do that. Because the body that we would rely on being person to person is handicapped. So I think one of the things about social media, I think, and spending a lot of time there, too much time, is it's going to get you tired. And you mentioned earlier, you said the person saying, I need a nap. I'm finding a lot of people say, I'm tired. I'm really tired right now. I think there's a lot of that happening because of the lack of direct interfacing with people that we're used to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for fielding that question that I just randomly picked out there. I was just thinking about it and just like, man, it's got to be something. It's doing something to us, right? Like we know that.
We know that, and I don't pretend to know all that it's doing for sure, but we know at least it's doing that. It's tiring the soul because the soul was meant for direct interaction, direct personal interaction.
That's good. That's good. Well, I want to get a little practical here, if you're game. Imagine that me. I'm a well, I don't know what is that? I'm a 3-7. I'm not supposed to be that practical, right?
No, 7 are pragmatic. 3s and 7s are quite pragmatic.
Okay, it makes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We had Darren on here talking about the Enneagram, and he made fun of the 8s a little too much, and they were in the comment section. Some good comments were made over there. So, but anyways, I want to get a little bit pragmatic when we're dealing with soul care, caring for the soul. What are some, like, if you're just talking with somebody, you got a couple minutes with them and they're going like, man, right now I'm not doing great. What are some just baseline things that anybody could do to start caring for their soul in a more helpful and beneficial way where they could see a way forward out of kind of maybe it's not even bad. Maybe it's just kind of blah.
I start with very basic things like, what do you want for yourself? What do you want? Jesus asked the blind man, what do you want? You'd think the answer is obvious, and it is obvious, but I think Jesus is wanting us to declare ourselves. What do I want? if I'm in a bad place, what is it that I want? Secondly, because that's a declaration. I got to declare myself with that. Because when I declare myself, then the question becomes, what am I willing to do about that? In other words, what responsibility will I take? The third thing I'm going to say, you're not going to get out of the funk you're in or the place you're in. You're not going to do that alone. You cannot do that on your own. And I would really ask guys, this is a lesson that I had to kind of learn the hard way, to really let people in on what's going on. Find someone that you can talk with, because you cannot unpack that alone. There's some things that you can do alone, like you can take a sensory walk. I encourage guys a lot to just go for a slow sensory walk, i.e., you're paying attention to what you hear, see, smell, taste, and feel. Because when you're doing that, you're not living in tomorrow. You're focusing on your body, and your body is here today.
Yeah.
Sufficient are the things tomorrow, Jesus says in Matthew 6. Let's just live right here, right now. So that's a sensory walk is helpful. Yeah, and get a coach, get a life coach that will help you.
Yeah.
What else can you do? If you start physically, are you getting what you need physically? That's where I'd start. And then there's also things like you're going to have to unpack your family history, because I think a lot of us go into ministry. I went into ministry. It was more around fulfilling my compulsions than answering my calling. I answered my calling as best I knew how. I felt like God wants me to do this, but I think I found a niche where I could live in some compulsions as well. Compulsions will always tire me out. Calling can make me tired, but not like compulsion will. Because my compulsion is I'm doing things out of the wrong energy and out for the wrong reasons in service of something that God didn't give ministry to serve. Ministry will never serve my deepest identity needs. And if I'm using it for that, I'm going to get really tired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about it before, but for me, again, I'm willing to put myself out there. One of the reasons I planted a church was because I wanted to create a stable family.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where that came out of, a compulsion. And I was so exhausted with the work of ministry, and I couldn't figure it out. And it was because I was trying to feed something that it was never meant to feed.
Yeah. Very good. Very good illustration. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
and
good.
We all have them. So it's not, what we're trying to do is identify them and give them to the Lord.
It's good. Yeah. One of the things I love about the way you guys lead and teach is that desire and what we want isn't a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Right. It can go sideways, right? Or it can be a bad thing, but not all desires are bad. Right. And so some of the ways forward, the very first thing you said is, what do I want?
Yeah.
I find that a lot of Christians, particularly who tend to be a little bit more pietistic in their nature, have a really hard time getting in touch with what they want, because that feels wrong. Am I wrong in that?
I think some of us have been raised with feeling like that is not a wise or holy thing to do. And I just feel that's unfortunate. Certainly, my desire can be warped and go, as you said, sideways, because I have, I've experienced the fall, obviously. But God is out to redeem desire, because if I don't have desire energizing my life, I'm left with duty, and I'm going to get really tired doing that. Tried ministry simply out of duty for 30 years. I doubt if you can make it. There is a place for duty, but there's a place for desire as well.
What about somebody who's not in ministry? Stay-at-home mom, banker, how does that come into play there where it's not ministry?
I think it's still you're a human being, and God created you with this great capacity to desire, to long for something that isn't present now, but maybe by God's grace I can make happen.
Mm.
So I think most of us, no matter what your profession is, we have a desire to see things differently. If you're at home with kids, you better have a desire as to what you're hoping that God would be gracious to help you raise these kids toward.
Yeah.
Desire is always orientated to what I think is beautiful, what I think is good, true, and beautiful. So I think by thinking about my desires, it gives me a handle on, has my sense of beauty been appropriately impacted by the sensibilities and the beauty of our Lord?
Mm. That's good.
Psalmist said, I want to dwell in the house of the Lord to behold the beauty of the Lord forever. That was his desire. And so a desire always takes us to what we think is beautiful. Now, we can be really messed up in what we think is beautiful. And so I'm not saying that everything I think is beautiful and is necessarily good and true and beautiful from God's perspective, but we can't live a life that's fully alive without a desire and beauty being a big part of it. Just can't.
That's good. That's good. Well, let's do this. I got one more quick question for you, and then what I'll do is I'll ask a few of a question that we got here in our chat. But just the last thing I wanted to hear from you on really was in your counseling, your coaching, and all the people you're working with now. What is something that you're just seeing that's bringing a lot of hope to you in this season? What's something that you would share that's just, man, we're going to be okay. It might be difficult, but you always bring a lot of hope to me every time we talk. So I'm somewhat selfishly asking you to encourage me here. So
are you speaking directly to the situation in which we find ourselves?
Yes.
Virus, or just more broadly speaking?
Yeah, this virus stuff with people losing work and, when are we opening back up and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, I attend the little country church where my brother is the very part-time pastor, and where my papa was an elder way back, and my mom grew up. So we had we have a little service on Sundays, and I did the service this past week, and I said it this way: whenever we're great teams, great marriage relationships, great businesses, they always remember what got them where they are. They never forget the fundamentals of what made them good. And I think the fundamental that what makes us as Christians live well is found in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. And if that's true, I'm going to be okay. I have everything that I need. And my point, I used that this past Sunday in my little devotional, and I said by implication, here's what I think we've got. It's okay to be a sheep. I think we're in the midst of something that shows we're all sheep. Sheep are not very impressive animals. I mean, they're not smart. They don't have big teeth that they can defend themselves. They're not fast. They can't run like a deer, run away. They're pretty helpless, kind of stupid, and it's not okay to be a sheep if you're on your own. But if you got a good shepherd, it's okay to be a sheep. So a sheep doesn't have to worry, as Jesus said, I'm going to take care of that. So I just would tell people, I'm really encouraged that I see people saying, this is an opportunity for me to believe and to live as if I have a good shepherd. That doesn't mean that I won't face hard times. That doesn't mean that some people won't die. We do. I've lost a former elder in a church where I has passed away because of this. And it was very surprising to hear that. But ultimately, David says, in all my needs now, and even in the next life, it's going to be okay, because the sheepdog of mercy and goodness are chasing me all the way to the house of the Lord, where I'm going to dwell forever. So I just say it's a chance for us to go back to the basics of what we believe and say, if this is true, I'm going to be okay. We will be okay because we are God's people. So,
man, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. You made me want to quit being a preacher halfway through that because that's so good. So, but man, I really appreciate that. So, hey, we got one question here. I want to make sure we ask it. Mike Littleton, I know Mike. He asked how often you should take a sabbatical and for how long.
Yeah. Hello, Mike. We encourage at least 3 months after 6 years of service. Now, some people are finding I don't want 6 years, 4 years, 5 years. Fine. But I think the sabbatical needs to be at least minimum of 2 months if you're going to do every 4 years, because it really takes people about a month to figure out how tired they were. Yeah. I know on my sabbatical, I wound up sleeping like 9 hours a night and then take a nap in the middle of the day. I did not realize how tired I was. And you just have to have space to kind of let the soul unwind, let the sediment settle out of the water so we can see and hear what God wants us to do moving forward. So at least minimum 3 months after 6 years is my recommendation.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you for answering. Thanks for asking the question, Mike. Appreciate that. And so Rob's over here quoting you. It's okay to be a sheep. Thanks, Jim. I don't know if you saw too. Don Payne said hello. One of my seminary professors and your old friend.
Yeah, so college buddy. Yes. Hello to Don.
So that's awesome. Well, hey, when I wrap up the show, you usually try to keep it under 45 minutes, but I always like to ask just kind of a funny question kind of around the topic that we're dealing with. With Darren, I made him diagnose or give an Enneagram score to his dog that's completely insane yesterday.
Okay.
And so I was trying to research you.
Did he say?
He said his dog's an 8.
Yeah. Okay.
So you were hard. You don't post a lot on the internet outside of work. But I did find a photo of you on a motorcycle wearing leather chaps. And
yeah, I also had jeans on under that, I hope. So
hey, I wasn't judging here. I wasn't going to say anything. So I didn't know you ride a motorcycle. That's news to me.
Yeah, I've ridden I rode a motorcycle for many years and got some great memories. I left Fort Collins once and rode all the way up to Glacier National Park. More than 1,000 miles, I think. So I've ridden the Pacific Coastal Highway. I've ridden Chickamauga Parkway. I've ridden what do they call the Devil's Tail here or something like that in the Great Smokies, where it's got 300 curves or something like that. So, but then my daughter needed a vehicle, so we had to sell that thing and give her some cash for a car. So,
oh man,
kid, you always get a kid. But my wife has a convertible, so that's probably better for me right now. And she lets me drive it on occasion.
That's great. You're a good man. One of the reasons I brought that up was I've been trying to convince my wife to let me buy a motorcycle for years, and she has always said no. But basically, whatever Jim Cofield says happens in the Patrick household. So I'm going to say Jim said it's okay.
No, don't do that, please. I don't want my son on a bike. I never went down, amazingly, got a lot of miles on it, but no, just get a convertible instead.
All right, fair enough. It was my try. Hey, Jim, I've loved having you on here. It's been
thanks.
It's been really fun. Why don't you share where can people find you? How can they connect with Crosspoint? How can they? There's my wife chiming in. Never going to happen in the comments, but. Jim, take a second. Tell people how they can find you. How can they connect with Crosspoint? Where can they find your book?
Crosspointministry.com. There's no E on point. Crosspoint Ministry is singular. Crosspointministry.com. You can find our book there. You can find it on Amazon as well. If you go to our website and you want coaching, you can find a way to request that, or you can simply send an email to me, jim@crosspointministry.com, and I'd be glad to help you in any way we can. Coaching is sabbatical and or just regular monthly spiritual life coaching. So
that's great. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, definitely connect with Crosspoint if you haven't. I would highly, highly encourage that. Just before we go, I want to let everybody know that tomorrow I actually have Brian Howard from Acts 29 at 2:00 Mountain Standard Time. So we're going to be talking about leadership that he learned in the military, as well as coaching business leaders, and as well as helping Acts 29 navigate through all sorts of ups and downs. And so that'll be a good time. And then I'm really excited. I've got coming up on May 5th, my first lady on the show. I was like, man, I've got a bunch of dudes on the show. We got to bring a lady on, and we got a boss coming on. Awesome lady. We've got Jess Conley. Check her out if you don't know her. She's written several books. She's speaking actually at our women's conference. Lord willing, we get to have that in the fall. But she is an awesome woman, very smart, and I'm excited to have her on the show. And we're going to do a show kind of more dedicated to the ladies. And so that'll be a lot of fun. So those are some things coming up. Well, Jim, thanks again. And everybody watching, thanks for joining. We will see you next time.